Great. Thank you so much, John. And now I am excited to introduce our next speaker, Kendrin Sonneville, who is a faculty member in the School of Public Health in the Department of Nutritional Sciences. And her talk is called The Overlooked Industry, How the Food Industry Contributes to Eating Disorders. And Kendrin's favorite food, at least for now, is Reese's peanut eggs, specifically the eggs, right, Kendrin?
Yeah, I'm highly influenced by the Easter holiday. So hi there, I'm Kendrin Sonneville and from the School of Public Health, and my research area is eating disorders prevention. And I'm going to start today by briefly introducing you to why I study eating disorders and why I think the food industry and the food environment has an important role to play in their prevention.
Invite up Kendrin Sonneville again to try her slides. Kendrin, when you're ready.
Yeah, and it's not letting me show my video, but that seems fine because we'll save all the internet bandwidth that we can. So I had anticipated an interruption by either my dog or my toddler, and I had not anticipated my Wi-Fi. So thanks again for the opportunity to talk about the contribution of the food industry to eating disorders. So I am an eating disorder preventionist, and I want to introduce you briefly to why I study eating disorders and why I think the food environment has an important role to play in their prevention. So eating disorders are a significant public health issue with profound impacts on both the individual and societal level. Eating disorders are biopsychosocial illnesses, and while we can't prevent all cases, there are sociocultural drivers of eating disorder risk that we can target in population level interventions. So what do I mean when I say sociocultural drivers? For many people, an internalization of body ideals or appearance ideals is a core feature in the development of their eating disorder. And by body ideals in this country, I'm referring to unattainable societal standards for appearance that tend to focus on thinness and muscularity and generally emphasize Eurocentric standards for beauty. Internalizing a particular body ideal can lead to body dissatisfaction and engagement in dieting and other weight control behaviors. And for some, this can trigger the development of a pattern of disordered eating that may include extreme dietary restriction or binge eating and or compensatory behaviors. Now, there are for-profit industries that benefit when people have an unhealthy relationship with food in their bodies. And these industries include the dieting industry, fitness, fashion, beauty, and the cosmetic surgery industries. And indeed, most of the macro level interventions for eating disorders prevention that have been tried to date have focused on these industries. The food industry, however, has been completely overlooked in efforts to decrease the incidence of eating disorders. And there's lots of reasons why I think that the food industry has an important role to play. And I'm going to focus on two kinds of products that the food industry sells: diet foods and then non-diet processed foods. So the food industry has capitalized on the rising preoccupation with weight control by creating numerous diet foods that use labels like light or lean or names like smart or halo to signal health and virtue. The widespread availability and aggressive marketing of these foods perpetuates a culture of dieting and the idea that we should be constantly in the pursuit of weight loss or weight control. While non-diet processed foods may be a necessary part of people's lives, the food industry has engineered these foods to be maximally rewarding. Processed foods are cheap, they're tasty, they're widely available, they're served in large quantities, and they're heavily marketed. And not surprisingly, they are the foods that are most commonly consumed in binge eating episodes. It's perhaps not going to be a surprise to anyone that the companies that make the diet foods and the processed foods are precisely the same companies, right? These are the companies who stand to profit when people have a disordered relationship with food and are using both sets of products: diet foods that are marketed for weight control, and then processed foods that are meant to sort of be consumed in excess, or foods that are meant for pleasure and enjoyment. Now, these companies also use predatory marketing practices that target populations which we know are particularly susceptible to eating disorders. The first one that comes to mind is children and adolescents who are in a critical developmental window that put them at risk for body dissatisfaction and eating disorders. The other are under-resourced communities where people are more likely to have, on average, higher weights and more likely to experience food insecurity, both of which we have found put them at increased risk of eating disorders. So I'm going to close by saying that the food industry employs a number of practices to produce, market, and sell foods that may increase the risk of eating disorders. And for anyone who works in the areas of nutrition or food systems or food policy, it's important that we recognize the role of the food environment, the food industry, and food-related messaging in the prevention of eating disorders, and to consider the extent to which strategies that promote health and food access and food sovereignty also support people's relationship with food and their bodies. Thank you.